Hey everyone, welcome back. Have you ever just caught yourself thinking, man, things were just better back in the day? Today we're going to dive deep into that whole feeling, that pull toward the past. We'll explore why it happens and what it might actually mean.
It is funny, isn't it, how we just tend to, romanticize the past, even though we know logically that it wasn't, all sunshine and roses. There's actually some fascinating psychology behind, and it connects to some pretty deep questions about how our minds work.
Absolutely. For this deep dive, we're taking a look at this YouTube video called Why Your Past Always Seems Better Than Your Present. And it explores the reasons behind our, nostalgia, how it affects our happiness in the here and now.
And that's the key, isn't it? It's not just about indulging in happy memory. It's about understanding how those memories shape our present experience, our choices, even our sense of who we are.
The video kicks off with this really interesting point that our memories are not like video recordings. We're not perfectly capturing every detail of the past. Instead, we're filtering, we're editing, creating a narrative rather than a completely objective account.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It reminds me of the work of William James. He was this pioneering psychologist. He described the way we experience the world as a stream of consciousness. And what he meant by that was that we don't remember everything equally. We latch on to certain moments, those that were emotionally charged, the peaks and valleys, while the mundane everyday experiences tend to fade.
So instead of remembering everything that happened during, say, our high school years, we might only remember specific moments that were particularly exciting, funny, or maybe even embarrassing.
Exactly. It's like we're creating this highlight reel in our minds. And just think about it. If we did remember every single detail, we'd be so overloaded with information. But this editing process, while it's helpful in some ways, also creates a bit of a skewed perception of the past.
It's like we're looking back through rose-tinted glasses, we're focusing on all the good stuff, and we kind of just forget the less pleasant parts.
Precisely. And on top of that, our brains have this built-in positivity bias. We're wired to focus on the positive, to remember the good things more easily than the bad. And again, this has its benefits. But when it comes to remembering the past, it can create an overly rosy picture.
Right. And then we compare our present with all its messy reality to this idealized version of the past. No wonder we end up feeling dissatisfied. It's like comparing apples and oranges.
Exactly. And the video uses a really relatable example to illustrate this point. Someone yearning for their simple, happy childhood.
It's easy to get caught up in that longing, isn't it? To think about how carefree and joyful life was back then.
But the question is, are they truly longing for childhood itself? Or for the lack of responsibility that came with it? Are they forgetting the anxieties of school exam, the drama with friends, all the things that felt so huge at the time? It's easy to romanticize a time when we didn't have bills to pay or careers to manage or all the complexities of adult life to navigate.
That's such a good point. It's like we're yearning for this freedom that in reality might have been more about the absence of certain pressures rather than some inherent quality of that particular time period. So if nostalgia can be this kind of trick, this selective editing of the past, then why is it so powerful? What is it about those memories that keeps us so hooked?
That's where things get really fascinating. The video dives into some intriguing ideas from Carl Jung, the famous psychologist who explored the depths of the human psyche. He saw nostalgia as more than just sentimental longing. He believed it could actually be a sign of something we're avoiding in the present, something he called an unconscious trap.
An unconscious trap. That sounds a little ominous. Can you explain what you mean by that? It sounds like there's more to our, rose-tinted memories than meets the eye.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Think about it this way. Imagine someone who's constantly idealizing a past relationship, dwelling on how perfect it was. On the surface, it might just seem like heartbreak, right? But Jung would suggest there might be something deeper at play, perhaps a fear of vulnerability, of putting themselves out there again and risking that same pain.
So by clinging to the memory of that perfect past love, they're actually avoiding the challenge of finding new love in the present. It's a way of protecting themselves from potential hurt.
Precisely. And this can apply to so many different aspects of life. That job you keep romanticizing. Maybe you're subconsciously avoiding the risk and uncertainty of starting your own business, that golden age of your youth. Perhaps it's a way to shield yourself from facing the realities of aging and the responsibilities that come with it. Nostalgia can be a powerful way to sidestep the discomfort of the present moment.
That's a really thought-provoking way to look at it. It's not just about missing the good old days. It's about what those memories might be protecting us from.
Exactly. And this connects to an even bigger idea, the fear of impermanence. The video brings in the work of Ernest Becker. He wrote this groundbreaking book called The Denial of Death. Now, before you think we're about to get too heavy.
I was just thinking that. Unconscious tracks, denial of death. Are we about to go full-on existential here?
Well, in a way, yes. But it's not as scary as it sounds. Becker's point is that a lot of human behavior, including this tendency to cling to the past, is driven by this underlying fear of our own mortality. Think about it, the past, even if it wasn't perfect, feels safe because it's over. It's a finished story. The present, on the other hand, is constantly changing, reminding us that nothing lasts forever.
So by fixating on the past, we're creating this illusion of stability, of control. We get to choose which memories we focus on, to edit out the bad parts. It's a way of denying that time keeps marching on whether we like it or not, which is kind of ironic, right?
Absolutely. The irony is this attempt to control time by clinging to the past actually makes us less free. It keeps us trapped in this cycle of longing for something we can never get back. Whereas embracing the present, with all its uncertainty, could be the key to true freedom.
It's like we're so afraid of time passing that we end up wasting the time we have.
It's a common paradox. And it's here that Carl Jung's ideas about the false self come in. He believed that we often build up this idealized version of our past selves, one that we then compare ourselves to, leading to self-doubt and a sense of inadequacy.
So it's not just about romanticizing past times. We also tend to romanticize who we were during those times. It's like we're creating a best of reel in our minds and then wondering why we don't measure up to that idealized image anymore.
Exactly. The video describes this false self as a mask. A projection. It's not who we truly were, but rather who we wish we were or who we think we should have been.
It's like that feeling of looking back and thinking, wow, I was so confident and on top of the world back then. What happened to that person? Maybe that person never existed as fully as we remember.
That's a powerful insight. And it leads us to a crucial question. Could the key to breaking free from this nostalgia trap be acceptance? Acceptance of the present. Acceptance of our imperfection, and acceptance of the fact that we're constantly evolving.
So instead of longing for a past self that might not have even been real, we shift our focus to who we are now and who we want to become.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that the past, while valuable for learning and growth, shouldn't hold us back from living fully in the present. And that's a process, not an overnight fix. It takes courage to let go of that idealized self and embrace the messy, evolving reality of who we are.
It sounds like the first step is acknowledging the stories we're telling ourselves about the past and then starting to question whether those stories are serving us or holding us back.
You got it. And that's precisely what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive. We'll uncover some practical strategies for challenging those rose-tinted memories and cultivating a more present-centered mindset. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. You know, it's amazing how much there is to unpack when it comes to nostalgia. In the last part, we talked about how our memories aren't always, reliable, how we tend to romanticize the past, and how this can sometimes be a way of avoiding things in the present.
We even touched on the idea that our fear of death might be lurking beneath those warm and fuzzy memories. Pretty deep stuff.
It is, but it's also incredibly eye-opening. For me, it's like we're starting to understand the mechanics behind those moments when we find ourselves, longing for the good old days.
Exactly. And now the big question is, how do we actually shift this mindset? It's one thing to understand the psychology of nostalgia, but how do we move from simply understanding it to actually living more in the present?
Right. Because knowing something intellectually and actually experiencing it are two different things. I'm really curious to hear what the YouTube video suggests for making this shift.
Well, one of the first things the video talks about is the importance of challenging our rose-tinted glasses. It's like taking those idealized memories and holding them up to the light, examining them a little more critically.
So instead of just thinking my college years were the best, we try to remember the all-nighters, the roommate drama, the stress of exams, the uncertainty of figuring out our future path, all those things that made it real and not just a highlight reel.
Precisely. It's about actively remembering the full picture, not just the airbrushed version that our memory often presents. And this can be surprisingly difficult. Our brains are good at protecting those feel-good memories, and it can take effort to dig a little deeper.
The video even suggests creating two lists, one for all the positive things we remember about a particular time period, and another for all the negative things that we might have conveniently forgot. It's kind of like making a pros and cons list, but for the past.
That's a fantastic exercise. By acknowledging both the good and the bad, we start to see the past more realistically, which can help us appreciate the present more fully. The video also talks about the power of mindfulness. Have you ever tried any mindfulness practices?
I've dabbled a bit. I've used some meditation apps and I know some deep breathing exercises. I'm aware that it's supposed to be helpful for being more present, but I'll admit I haven't been the most consistent.
Consistency is key, of course, but even short bursts of mindfulness can be incredibly beneficial. The core idea is to shift our focus away from all that mental chatter. The thoughts about the past, the worries about the future, and instead tune into the sensations of the present moment.
So instead of thinking about how amazing that concert was like 5 years ago, I try to notice the feeling of my feet on the ground, the sounds around me, the taste of my coffee, those sorts of things.
Exactly. It's about anchoring ourselves in the sensory experience of now. And research has actually shown that practicing mindfulness regularly can rewire our brain, making us less prone to dwelling on the past and more capable of enjoying the present moment.
I'm starting to see a theme here. It's not about trying to erase memories of the past, but rather about changing our relationship to them.
That's a fantastic insight. It's about recognizing that the past is a source of information, learning, and even inspiration. It can provide valuable lessons, but we don't want to get stuck there. It's like visiting a museum. We can appreciate the exhibits, but we don't try to live there.
I love that analogy. The YouTube video also talks about the importance of gratitude. It seems straightforward, but how does gratitude play into letting go of the past?
Well, gratitude is all about appreciating what we have in our lives right now. And when we're focused on the good things in the present, we're less likely to get caught up in that loop of longing for the past.
That makes sense. If I'm feeling grateful for my cozy apartment, my supportive friends, my interesting job, it's less likely that I'll spend my time dwelling on how great my backpacking trip will go.
Exactly. Gratitude shifts our attention to the abundance that already exists in our lives, which naturally reduces the pull of the past. And remember, it's not just about big things. It's about finding those little sparks of joy throughout the day. A good cup of tea, a sunny morning walk, a meaningful conversation.
It's like we're training our minds to notice the good stuff instead of taking it for granted. And that can make such a big difference in how we experience.
Absolutely. Now, remember how we talked about the idealized self, that perfect version of ourselves that we sometimes compare ourselves to?
Yes, the one that's probably more fantasy than reality.
Exactly. Well, instead of falling into the trap of comparison, what if we focused on how much we've grown since then? What new skills have we developed? What challenges have we overcome? What lessons have we learned?
That's a great way to reframe it. Instead of feeling disappointed that I'm not the carefree, adventurous person I was in my 20s, I can acknowledge that I've gained wisdom, resilience, and a deeper understanding of myself through my experience.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that life is a journey. Every stage has its unique beauty and value. We're meant to evolve, to learn, to become more than we were yesterday. And celebrating those changes, those moments of growth, can be incredibly empowering.
Instead of thinking, I wish I was still that person, we can ask ourselves, what have I learned that has shaped who I am today? And how can I use that to create an even better tomorrow?
Beautifully said. It's about embracing the present moment as an opportunity for continued growth and expansion. The past is done. The future is uncertain. But right now, we have the power to choose how we want to live, how we want to grow, and what kind of story we want to create.
That's such a powerful reminder. We have this incredible capacity for change and adaptation, but we can get stuck in the quicksand of nostalgia.
And that's the trap we need to break free from. By challenging our idealized memories, practicing mindfulness, cultivating gratitude, and focusing on growth, we can shift our relationship with the past and create a more meaningful and fulfilling present.
It feels like we're reclaiming our power over time. Instead of being ruled by memories, we're choosing how to learn from them and move forward.
Exactly. And that brings us to a crucial aspect of breaking free from the nostalgia trap action. It's not enough to just think differently about the past. We need to act differently in the present.
This is what I've been waiting for. How do we actually translate all these insights into real-world change? How do we put these ideas into practice?
That's a great question, and it's one we'll explore in detail in the final part of our deep dive. We'll discover how taking action that aligns with our values can help us break free from the grip of the past and create a more meaningful and fulfilling present. Stay tuned.
Welcome back, everyone. We've been on quite a journey exploring nostalgia, haven't we? We've talked about how our memories can play tricks on us, how we sometimes use the past to avoid the present, and we've even explored some powerful techniques for shifting our mindset to be, more present-focused.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground. But there's one crucial piece we haven't fully explored yet, the power of action. It's not enough to simply think differently about the past. To truly break free from the nostalgia trap, we need to act differently in the present.
That makes a lot of sense. But what does that look like in practice? What kind of actions are we talking about?
Well, the YouTube video we've been discussing emphasizes aligning our actions with our values. It's not enough to just wish things were different. We need to make choices that reflect what truly matters to us right now.
I see. So it's about bridging that gap between our thoughts and our actions. But can you give us some concrete examples? I think it would be really helpful for our listeners to hear how this might play out, in real life.
Absolutely. Imagine someone who constantly reminisces about their days as a musician, back when they felt, truly alive and passionate. Maybe they were in a band or they wrote their own songs and they spent hours lost in their music. But then life got in the way. Demanding job, family responsibilities, and that guitar has been sitting in the corner gathering dust.
I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling of losing touch with something they once loved and longing for a time when they pursued it more actively.
Exactly. So instead of just dwelling on those memories, the key is to find ways to bring that passion back into their life, even in small ways. It doesn't have to be about, becoming a rock star again. Maybe it's joining a local community choir, taking a few guitar lessons, or even just committing to playing for like 30 minutes a day.
It's not about trying to recreate the past, but rather about finding ways to express those values and passions in the present.
You got it. And this applies to all sorts of situations. Let's say you find yourself longing for the close-knit community you had growing up in a small town, but now you live in a big city and you feel like everyone is kind of isolated and doing their own thing.
That feeling of isolation is so common these days, especially in urban environments. It's easy to romanticize past connections and feel like something's missing in the present.
Well, instead of just wishing things were different, think about what actions you could take. Maybe it's joining a book club, volunteering at a local organization, taking a cooking class, or even just making a point of chatting with your neighbors more often.
It's about being proactive, about creating the kind of connections you crave instead of waiting for them to magically appear.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that action doesn't have to be grand or dramatic. It's the small, consistent steps that make the biggest difference over time.
The video uses the term microshifts to describe these small adjustments to our daily routines or habits that can move us in the direction we want to go.
I love that term. It's about creating a life that reflects our values, one micro shift at a time. And here's another key point. Action isn't just about doing more. It's also about letting go. Sometimes breaking free from the past means releasing old habits, beliefs, or even relationships that are no longer serving us.
That's a tough one, but it's so important. It can be really hard to let go of things that were once meaningful, even if they're now holding us back.
It takes courage, for sure, but it's essential for growth. It's like pruning a garden. You have to trim away the dead branches to make room for new growth.
That's a beautiful way to put it. So if we're feeling stuck in the past, it's worth asking ourselves, what do I need to let go of in order to create space for what I truly want in the present?
Exactly. It could be an outdated belief about yourself, a friendship that has become toxic, or even just a bunch of physical clutter that is weighing you down. Releasing what no longer serves us creates a sense of lightness and freedom, allowing us to move forward with more clarity and purpose.
It's like clearing out the attic, both physically and mentally, to make room for new possibilities.
I like that. And this brings us back to William James's idea that the stories we tell ourselves have power. When we take action that's aligned with our values, we're essentially rewriting our narrative. We're no longer defining ourselves by the past. We're actively shaping our present and our future.
We're going from passive observer to active author of our own lives.
Exactly. And that shift in perspective can be incredibly empowering. It's about recognizing that we have agency. We're not just products of our past, but creators of our present and future.
That's such an inspiring message. As we wrap up this deep dive, is there one key takeaway you'd like our listeners to remember?
The past can be a source of wisdom, inspiration, and even comfort. But it shouldn't hold us back from living fully in the present. By understanding how nostalgia works, by questioning our idealized memories, and by taking action that reflects our values, we can break free from the grip of the past and create a more meaningful and fulfilling life right now.
Beautifully said. And to our listeners, we leave you with this challenge. What is one small action you can take today that reflects what truly matters to you? It could be calling a loved one, revisiting a forgotten hobby, or simply taking a few minutes to appreciate the beauty of this present moment. The power to create a life you love is within you right now.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep embracing the amazing gift of the present moment.